You're listening to The Fix with Ryan Rothstein, live from the Prop Swap studios of AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Prop swap that ticket and cash in while the odds have improved. Once again, here's Ryan.
All right, welcome back live in the Prop Swap studios. The Fix, Friday edition. And it's 10:30, so you know it's time for J Mac, Johnny Mac, a.k.a. John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com, SI.com, and host of Extending the Play, which you can listen to tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Let's bring John into the conversation now. And, John, I'm going to ask you a question that I posed to start the show. Who or what team is under the most pressure to win this weekend in the NFL?
I don't think there's any question about that, and that's the Baltimore Ravens because of what has gone on in the postseason in prior years, and obviously, most notably, I think last season when a lot of people thought they were the best team in football. And I think you could have made a strong argument they were during the regular season. Got to win this time around. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Doesn't necessarily have to be pretty. And they have maybe, if you look at the entire first week and remember the added game on each side, that might be the most competitive game, at least on paper.
Yeah, that's the answer that I gave. Conlon Farrell, by the way, is co-hosting with me tonight. Conlon said, go ahead, Conlon, why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, so, John, I brought up just because I brought up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road to the Washington football team at FedEx Field, just because of the fact where the two teams are on paper. Tom Brady signs with the Bucs this offseason. They make the big splash. They get Antonio Brown. They have Mike Evans. They have all the names on paper that you think, wow, this game really shouldn't even be a competition. Obviously, Washington finds himself in the playoffs after what happened in Philly on Sunday night. I'm sure you're exhausted even talking about the subject. But I just think that, with that being said, the Bucs being one and done in Tom's first year in Tampa would not be good.
No, and Colin's mic is low. He was talking Tampa, Washington, which I get. But I mean, it's looking more and more likely that Taylor Heineke is going to play, and maybe start and maybe play the entire game. So I think that changes any thoughts of. Look, I don't think. Watching Alex Smith play live, it was clear he wasn't healthy, and that's, I think, the reason Washington isn't going to play him. And I don't know if they just don't have enough talent at this standpoint. The defense would have to go out and win the game for them. And with that front, it's always possible. If you think about Tom Brady when he was younger and losing the 2 Super Bowls to the Giants, that's what beat him.
Yeah.
Defensive fronts, pressure right up the middle, got him a little bit uncomfortable. So that's the recipe, but this team is just not equipped. And certainly, Taylor, I'm going to be rooting for him because I think it would be a great story. But, I mean, he was just brought back in December. He wasn't even with the team. Remember, they lost. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins started the season, if you remember, back in week 1, and that collapsed by the Eagles. But then he was so bad, they benched him for Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen got hurt. Then they finally got Alex Smith up to speed. He got hurt. They had to go back to Haskins. They waived him because he was so immature. And Taylor was back in school, back at Old Dominion, earning his engineering degree, and now he's got to go out and beat Tom Brady. I would love to see it, but I just can't picture it.
All right, John, so I want to get to every game this weekend with you and your thoughts, your prediction. I'm not going to force you to throw scores out there, but let's start with the Bills and the Colts. And this one's, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. The Colts, they have success on the ground. The Bills, Josh Allen seems to be getting better and better every single week. The line is 6.5 now on DraftKings. How do you see this one playing out in Buffalo?
Yeah, I think we got to see if Stephon Diggs is healthy, if Chad Beasley is healthy, and John Brown might even be back. But, the Bills are so explosive. I think if those guys are clicking on all cylinders, I think it's going to be really difficult for Indianapolis to keep up, even though they have a pretty good defense as far as defenses go in the modern era. But they're generally very good against the run, and Buffalo doesn't run anyway. They can't run the ball. They don't run the ball. They're not really interested in running the ball, other than Allen, getting some off-schedule yardage because of his athleticism. So that's not the strength of their team anyway. And you can throw a little bit on Indianapolis. So, I think right now going into the playoffs, you would argue who's that second best team in the AFC behind Kansas City, and you'd kind of have to debate. Baltimore got hot, and then Buffalo. Those are the two top teams, I think, going into the playoffs. So you have to like Buffalo's chances. On the other hand, what Indianapolis does have is a veteran quarterback, and somebody like Frank Reich, as we know here, as a head coach who knows how to win in the postseason. If you go back to his time all the way in Buffalo as a player, he knows how to win in the postseason. Maybe that gives them a little bit of a leg up against a team that's still trying to learn and hasn't been in this position before. So a little bit of concern there, but they're just so explosive. I don't see how you hold them down, especially in this year where defenses have been just terrible across the board.
All right, John, we'll move to the next game on the slate then, would be the Rams at Seattle. Obviously, the big news in that one being the status of Rams quarterback Jared Goff, whether he'll play or not. I mean, I know Sean McVay's been pretty tight-lipped about that. Do you think that there's any chance, if Goff doesn't go, that the Rams, even with their defense and getting after Russell Wilson, have a shot in Seattle on Saturday?
No, if Goff can't go, and it looks like he's not going to be able to go, and John Walford took most of the first team reps, not most of them, basically all of them. Goff is pushing to play. It's the postseason, but that's one of those things where even if he does play, he's not going to be near 100%, similar to Alex Smith here in Philadelphia in the win in your in-game for Washington. It just, those things tend not to work out, so they're up against it. It's always difficult when you see these situations, and we have two of them. We have Washington and we have the Rams, as you mentioned, where you got to most likely have to play backup quarterbacks. And it's worked before, Jeff Hostetler, Nick Foles, but I don't like you hate to boil things down to quarterbacks because there's a lot more that goes into it. And you mentioned that Rams defense and Aaron Donald. But Russell Wilson's going to be able to do some things, and he's going to be able to create even something out of nothing at some point in the game. And I just can't picture a team quarterback by John Wolford upsetting a Russell Wilson team. I can't picture what that would look like.
Yeah, it's we know an upset's coming. We just don't know where. This game is one of the more more difficult games to predict heading into NFL Super Wild Card Weekend. All right, let's go to the nightcap on Saturday night. As we've mentioned, Tampa Bay going into Washington to take on the football team. The line opened at 7.5. You can now find it at 8 on PointsBet. And I think I know your answer, but what type of game are we about to see on Saturday night? I'll ask you, how much does Tampa Bay win by?
Yeah, I think they're going to win by a lot. I don't think Washington's even going to be in the football game. because of the things I mentioned. I mean, I think Heineke wasn't brought up till December 19th to the active roster. And as I mentioned, he wasn't signed on the practice squad till I think it was December 4th. He was back in school getting his engineering degree. I mean, it's just an awful situation. And, you know, maybe they're wondering if they should have waived Dwayne Haskins now, but I don't think that would have helped them much either. Either way, though, I mean, it's a shame. And that's the thing. Now that we're talking these things out, and I said yesterday, Ryan, that there's going to be an upset, and it'll probably be on Sunday. But there's only one chance for an upset on Saturday, and it is Indianapolis against Buffalo, because the other two teams aren't going to have quarterbacks.
Yeah, so then, John, like you mentioned, Sunday, we go with the opener there, and that you mentioned in the beginning of your segment, the most intriguing matchup you see and the most pressure being on the Baltimore Ravens going into Tennessee after last year's disappointing finish for them. Right now, that line's at 3 even. Do the Tennessee Titans, again, a lot of people, to me, have kind of given a back seat to, obviously, Derrick Henry leads the league in rushing, only player to eclipse the 2,000-yard mark this season. But A.J. Brown and Corey Davis are pretty darn good receivers in my eyes. Do they have enough firepower with that offense to put a scare into the Baltimore Ravens and pull off an upset?
Yeah, I mean, I could see either team winning that game. As I mentioned, I think there's tremendous pressure. I think you got to add that into it because of how poorly Baltimore has performed in the playoffs recently, and tremendous pressure on Lamar Jackson because of how poorly he's performed. So you have to add that into it as well. But they're also very similar teams in the fact that they're run first, but they have quarterbacks that can take advantage of the running game and create big plays. And Ryan Tannehill's been able to do that with Tennessee as well. I think talent-wise, you know, as I said, Baltimore's probably more talented. But there are things working against them because of, you know, that kind of stuff is real. When you have that monkey on your back, you got to get it off. Sometimes it's not easy to do that. And if you get off to a bad start, it's human nature to start thinking, woe is me, here we go again. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the football game. And you know how Tennessee's going to win the game. And it is Derrick Henry. It is, you know, a 2,000-yard rusher, which doesn't happen every day, never mind in the modern NFL where everybody wants to throw the football. First since Adrian Peterson's MVP year, I think. I gotta look that up. But, you know, they need to get ahead. They got to play with the lead, and that's what they're comfortable doing. And I think in a lot of ways, Baltimore's the same way. So I think the early lead in that game is going to be really, really important. Not necessarily 7-0, but if somebody gets up 2 scores, I think it's going to be really, really impactful to deciding who wins that game.
All right, let's go to Sunday in the middle of the afternoon, the 4:40 start. Bears and the Saints. The Bears are up to 10.5-point underdogs. And you have one team that had Super Bowl and still does have Super Bowl aspirations, and you have another team that had a 6-game losing streak this season, yet here they are in the first weekend of the NFL postseason. I think I know where you're going here as well, but is there any chance the Bears can at least cover? I don't even think I should ask you if they win, but your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, this is my lock of the week. This is what I'm giving out to the people. Saints by 40. I'm exaggerating, but they're going to blow. They're going to blow them out.
Yeah.
And once, you know, and I don't even love the Saints. I think I mentioned yesterday on the show, I think people overrate them a little bit. I don't think Drew Brees has been the same since coming back from all the rib fractures. And we'll see. He should be getting a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable, at least week in and week out. They should get Kamara back. That'll be obviously very, very helpful. They might even get Thomas back. I'm not sure how that's trending. I haven't checked that yet, but as you know, they're just too good. They're just too talented, and Chicago. You know, you almost hope that, for their perspective, if you're a Bears fan, you almost hope that Mitch Trubisky sprains the ankle. Nick Foles has got to come in and gets unconscious again, and maybe that's how they win and upset the Saints. But that's kind of implausible. I mean, they've beaten a lot of bad teams, and you have to give Mitchell Trubisky credit because, I mean, he had been written off. And you also have to give the coaching staff credit and Bill Lazor or both, you know, Bill was here with Chip Kelly, John DeFilippo. Obviously, people know very well was here. They've done a very good job of sort of turning much like the Eagles did with Nick Foles back in the Super Bowl season and making things very simple for him, cutting the field in half, high-low reads. But you can't beat the Saints like that. You're going to have to score the points to beat the Saints, and you're going to have to make plays, and he's just not capable.
All right, John, we'll round out the wild card weekend, the Super Six in Heinz Field, or in Pittsburgh, I should say, at Heinz Field, with the divisional matchup between the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, the Browns fans rejoiced, the first playoff berth since 2002 in the Bush administration. Now, you mentioned pressure, obviously, Baltimore losing last year to Tennessee in disappointing fashion. The Pittsburgh Steelers, do they have pressure, and do they have, you know what I mean, a thing where they have to go out and take care of basically their little brother in the Cleveland Browns, who they've beaten down for numerous years in a row now? And do the Browns come out with sort of we're playing with house money, nothing to lose mentality? Obviously, COVID has to strike the Cleveland Browns when they're finally decent, and they'll be without Stefanski and all-pro guy Joel Patino too. Do they have any shot just with the circumstances or under the circumstances with the COVID and all that stuff? Is this a game?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, and it really is a sad story for the Browns. It's been so long, and then all the COVID issues hits. They're not even going to have their head coach that got them here, and has been so impactful. Mike Prefer, the special teams coach, is going to sit in. You've seen how that's worked in other places when the head coach isn't there during the regular season. And then, you know, there's also the player issues and the fact they haven't been able to practice and their facilities are closed.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steelers have not been playing well down the stretch. And from that perspective, if everything were even and Cleveland wasn't having all these problems, I would say that the Steelers were ripe for the upset.
Yep.
But I don't see how you can overcome that kind of stuff. I really don't. It's just too much. And you know, we mentioned the quarterback issues on Saturday for Washington and the Rams. I mean, this is even worse with no head coach and no practicing and so many people on the COVID list. It's just too much to overcome.
Now, John, I just wanted to ask you one more brief thing about that game, and it comes on the way I see it as almost a misquote of Steelers wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, basically saying the Browns are the Browns, they're nameless gray faces. You know what I mean? Basically kind of we're going to waltz in and kind of walk right over them. I believe he was more so embracing the Tomlin mentality, no matter who's strapping up the helmet across from us, we have to go out and play our football game to win. And I know you are like to denounce the Twitter trolls sometimes that get so engrossed in these kind of comments and blow them way out of proportion. Did you think anything of what Smith-Schuster said?
No, I mean, I don't think you ever like when a player gives the opposition anything if you're a head coach. So it's never the best case scenario, but I do think that's a little bit overblown by fans more than players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, the Steelers and Browns are the Steelers and Browns. It's been, you know, if you go back to, you know, I always joke, you know, the Steelers have had 3 coaches since 1968. Obviously, the Browns, you had to reboot in 99. They've had, you know, 3 coaches in 3 months, basically, at times. I mean, they change so often, change more than most people change underwear. And they finally got it right, it seems, with Kevin Stefanski. And now he's not even going to be there. So it is one of those things where the so-called rivalry has been like kindling versus fire.
Yeah.
And the Steelers are the fire. And I'm sure the Browns were excited for this. And then all this stuff hit, and it's, you know, one of those situations where you go, here we go again, and how are we going to beat this team? And they're probably not going to beat them. But, you know, after the emotion of that wears off, they'll realize in a normal season, hopefully, if we ever get to a normal state again, the Browns are finally headed in the right direction, and there's going to be better days for them. And obviously the Steelers, once Ben is done, they're going to have a bit of a lull, most likely.
John, which quarterback has the biggest weekend?
Well, it's not going to be Walford. It's not going to be Hines.
Okay, process of elimination.
I think, you know, I think Josh Allen has a chance. I think Tom has a chance. I think Drew is too banged up. I don't think Tannehill or Lamar. I think, as I mentioned, that game's going to be more run suited. You know, maybe Russell Wilson, but I'm going to go Josh Allen. I mean, I think he's number 2 in the MVP race this season. They're so explosive. They're so good offensively. You know, generally you look at these things, you look at the playoffs, who's hot at the right time. They're certainly hot. They're certainly playing well. And then I look at these other quarterbacks and I say, well, Russell Wilson, yeah, it's going to be easy to win the game because of the opposing quarterback, but you do have Aaron Donald to deal with. And, you know, with Tom Brady, similar situation. Yeah, you're going to win the game, but you still got to deal with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen. So I don't think, you know, DeForest Buckner's had a great season, but I just think keeps rolling for Josh Allen.
John, what do you have going on tomorrow on extending the play?
Well, we got to get into the Eagles a little bit, the coaching situation first. Ken Flajole being the latest. So obviously there's going to be consistent, not consistent, but significant changes on the coaching staff. Obviously, I think the key to look at is, do the Eagles make a complete change on the defensive side of the football? Then you start talking about blowing everybody out. And that means going outside the building versus, say, elevating Matt Burke. And then on the offensive side, I think what you're going to look at is Doug going to be given the leash to do what he wants to do? Because if he is, I think, you know, Press Taylor is going to get elevated to offensive coordinator. I know that's going to excite people. If he isn't, you know, Jeffrey Lurie's going to make him go outside for, maybe he tries to get Graham Harrell again. Maybe he can talk to Mike Kafka this time. Who knows? But if they do go outside the building, I don't think that's necessarily a good sign, because that means the owner's probably getting involved. And then we'll shift to the playoffs. We got to talk to the playoffs.
All right, plenty.
About the playoffs.
Yeah, plenty to get to for you on extending the play tomorrow right here on 1490 Sports Betting Radio. It all starts at 10 a.m. going up to 11 a.m. Be sure you tune in. Follow John on Twitter as well at JF McMullen, and all of his written work can be found at phillyvoice.com and si.com. John, I hope you have a lovely Super Wild Card weekend. And wait, before you leave, just give me your final prediction on the college title game.
Boy, that I would love to see Ohio State win the game. It's interesting when you call Ohio State, an underdog, but that's where they are. But Alabama's going to win the game. Alabama again, and he'd probably give you my prediction for next year as well. Alabama or Clemson. There you go.
You're going out on a limb, but that's you got to live dangerously sometimes.
Oh, it's boring. I
know.
want somebody else to jump up, but.
I'm with you.
That's what college football is now. It's boring.
That's a conversation maybe for next week. All right, John, enjoy your weekend, my friend. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Yep. There he is, the legend.
Always good stuff with Johnny Mac, man.
The OG.
Yeah, again, I'm interested to see how he must enjoy these last couple weeks where the Eagles aren't playing, so he isn't bombarded and he's actually gets to talk other football besides the treehouse drama that is the Eagles front office.
The treehouse drama. I mean, dude, but like the NFL offseason has become crazier than the regular season at times.
Yeah.
It is a nice break. Let's not get that mistaken. All right, 1 hour down, baby. We're rocking and rolling. Conlon and I have you covered for the next 2 hours. Let's get to the top of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to start diving in to all of these NFL games and much more. Keep it locked in right here on The Fix.